Hello, everyone, and welcome to English Today Journey. I'm happy you are here. If you enjoy learning English and want to improve every day, don't forget to subscribe so you can get daily English tips and guidance. Now, let's talk about something very important for advanced learners: speed. Native English speakers usually speak very fast. They often drop sounds, connect words together, and use short forms like contractions. For beginners or lower-level learners, this can feel scary and stressful. You may feel lost or confused when people speak quickly. But at a C2 level, fast English should not scare you anymore. In fact, it should excite you. Your goal is to reach a point where fast English feels natural and enjoyable, not difficult. A great way to train your listening is to start at normal speed. First, listen carefully and make sure you understand the general meaning. After that, push yourself a little. Try listening again at a slightly faster speed using YouTube or podcast apps. At first, this may feel challenging, but that is a good sign. It means your brain is working and growing. When you can understand English at a faster speed, normal conversations will suddenly feel slow and easy. Think of your brain like a runner who trains with heavy weights on their ankles. Training feels hard, but it makes them stronger. When the weights are removed, the runner feels light and fast. Listening practice works the same way. When you challenge yourself with speed, everyday English becomes much easier. Another very important thing to remember is this: listening is not only about understanding other people. Listening also trains your brain to think in English. The more English you hear, the more your inner voice begins to change. It starts using English words, natural rhythms, common expressions, and even humor. Over time, you stop translating in your head. Instead, your answers come automatically because English patterns already live inside your mind. Listening creates a strong internal library of language. This library supports everything else you do in English. It improves your speaking, your writing, and even your reading. Listening is the foundation of all language skills. At a C2 level, the more you listen, the more natural and confident your English output becomes. So, how should you practice listening every day at this level? The answer is simple: variety and consistency. Every single day, expose your ears to English in different ways. You might listen to a podcast in the morning, watch the news during lunch, and enjoy a comedy show in the evening. Mix serious topics with fun ones. Listen to different accents and speaking styles. Also, don't only listen passively while doing other tasks. Set aside time to truly focus. Pay attention to how words are pronounced, how sentences are built, and how ideas flow. Try shadowing the speaker or analyzing interesting phrases. Think of listening practice like going to the gym for your ears. If you always lift the same weight, your muscles stop growing. To improve, you must challenge yourself regularly. When you train with heavier and different weights, your body becomes stronger. The same idea applies to listening in English. Before we move on, I want to leave you with one important thought about listening at the C2 level. Listening at this stage is not only about skill. It is also about identity. When you can listen at a C2 level, you are no longer standing outside the conversation, trying hard to understand and catch up. Instead, you are fully inside the conversation. You laugh at the same jokes at the same time as others. You react naturally without delay. You understand cultural references, humor, and hidden meanings without needing explanations. This is the real difference between advanced English and mastered English. And I promise you this: if you keep pushing yourself, if you stay curious, if you actively look for different types of content, and if you are willing to feel uncomfortable sometimes, your listening will grow stronger and stronger. One day, English will stop feeling like a foreign language. It will start to feel like second nature, something that belongs to you. Now that we have started this journey by focusing on listening, it is time to change our focus and move towards speaking. Speaking is the skill most learners dream about. It is the skill that makes people feel truly fluent and confident. At the C2 level, speaking is no longer about just forming sentences quickly. You have already passed that stage. You can explain your ideas clearly, join conversations easily, and talk about almost any topic. At this higher level, speaking becomes about refinement and control. It is about small details. It is about choosing the best words, adjusting your tone, and sounding natural and confident. It is not enough to sound correct. You want to sound polished and sophisticated. You want to change how you speak depending on the situation. A friendly conversation, a formal presentation, and a serious debate all require different speaking styles. Speaking at the C2 level is like playing a musical instrument at a concert level. You are not just hitting the correct notes anymore. You are shaping the sound. You are expressing meaning, emotion, and intention. You are interpreting the message, not just delivering it. That is the true beauty of mastering spoken English. When people imagine fluent speaking, they often think of speed. They imagine words coming out fast without pauses. But true fluency is not about speaking quickly. True fluency is about speaking comfortably. It is about having control over your speech. It includes natural pauses, clear rhythm, and intonation that matches what you want to say. Your voice rises and falls naturally. Your pauses feel calm, not forced. Your message sounds clear, confident, and human. This level of speaking shows real mastery. It shows that English is no longer something you struggle with. It is something you use naturally, thoughtfully, and with confidence. At the C2 level, your speaking should use vocabulary that fits the moment. You no longer need to worry all the time about questions like, "Is my grammar correct?" At this stage, grammar is already part of you. Instead, your focus changes. You start asking better questions such as, how can I make my message stronger? How can I sound more clear, more elegant, or more convincing? This is the level where you can decide how you want to sound. You can choose to be casual or formal, playful or serious, direct or polite. You can soften your words or make them firm, depending on the situation. This ability to change your speaking style easily is a clear sign that you have truly mastered spoken English. One of the best ways to build this skill is to practice speaking in many different situations. Some advanced learners become very comfortable in one style only. For example, they may speak very well with friends in relaxed conversations, but feel nervous or awkward when giving a formal presentation. Others may sound confident in professional settings but struggle in casual, friendly chats. To reach C2, you must be able to move smoothly between these styles. A helpful exercise is to take one simple story and tell it in different ways. First, tell it as if you were chatting with a close friend. Then, tell the same story as if you were speaking to an academic or professional audience. After that, tell it again as if you are entertaining children. When you do this, notice how everything changes. Your vocabulary becomes simpler or more complex. Your rhythm becomes faster or slower. Your voice sounds more relaxed, more serious, or more energetic. This flexibility is what separates very good speakers from truly excellent ones. Now let's talk about nuance, because nuance is where advanced speaking really shines. Nuance means small differences in meaning. These differences come from choosing one word instead of another, stressing a certain word, changing your tone, adding a pause, or using humor or irony. These small choices can completely change how your message feels. For example, think about the sentence, "That's interesting." If you say it with a flat voice, it may sound polite but empty. If you say it with rising intonation, it can show real curiosity and interest. If you say it slowly with an ironic tone, it can mean the opposite, that you are not impressed at all. The words stay the same, but the meaning changes because of how you say them. At the C2 level, you should start playing with these tools. Communication is not just about words and grammar. It is about emotion, intention, and connection. It is about how your listener feels when they hear you speak. Another important skill at this level is persuasion. You want to be able to convince people, influence opinions, and clearly support your ideas. This means organizing your thoughts well, choosing strong but appropriate language, and speaking with confidence. When you can do this naturally, Your English stops sounding like a learned skill and starts sounding like a powerful tool you fully control. At this level, your goal is to make your message clear, strong, and convincing. This is especially important if you use English in professional or academic situations. It is not enough to speak correctly. You want people to understand your ideas easily and feel persuaded by what you say. A very useful exercise is to choose a topic you care about and practice giving a short, persuasive speech. Imagine you are trying to convince someone of your opinion. While speaking, use linking words and phrases such as "on the other hand." It could be argued that, nevertheless, to a certain extent, and similar expressions. These connectors help your ideas flow smoothly and sound more advanced. Practice building your argument step by step. Start with a clear point, support it with reasons or examples, and finish with a strong conclusion. This exercise does more than improve your speaking. It also trains your brain to think clearly in English. Another important skill at the C2 level is spontaneity. You should feel comfortable when conversations take an unexpected turn. This includes sudden questions, interruptions, or fast topic changes. Real conversations are unpredictable, so your practice should be too. This is why improvisation is so important. Do not only practice speeches that you prepare in advance. Practice speaking without planning. For example, pick a random object near you, such as a pen, a phone, or a coffee mug. Set a timer for 2 minutes and start talking about it without stopping. Describe what it looks like and how it is used. Then invent a story about it. Then argue why it is important or useful. The topic does not matter. The goal is to train your brain to keep producing language even when you have no idea what to say at first. This kind of practice builds real confidence. In real conversations, you never know exactly what the other person will say next. When you train your brain to handle uncertainty, you stop panicking and start trusting your English. One common problem many advanced learners face is that they sound correct but not natural. Their grammar is fine, but something feels slightly off. The rhythm may sound unnatural. The word choice may feel too formal. They may pause in places where native speakers usually do not. These small issues can make speech sound learned instead of natural. To fix this, shadowing is one of the most powerful tools you can use. Choose recordings of native speakers, especially in the speaking style you want to improve. This could be casual conversation, professional talks, or public speeches. Listen carefully and repeat after the speaker. Do not only copy the words. Copy the intonation, the emotion, the pauses, and the rhythm. Try to sound as close to the speaker as possible. If you practice shadowing every day, even for just 5 minutes, you will notice changes. Your speech will start to flow more naturally. Your mouth will learn the rhythm of English, and your brain will stop translating from your first language. Over time, speaking will feel automatic, not forced. At the C2 level, vocabulary also changes its role. It is no longer about knowing more words than everyone else. It is about choosing the right words at the right moment. Simple words used well are often more powerful than complex words used poorly. When your vocabulary, rhythm, and confidence come together, your English starts to sound truly natural and mature. This is when English stops feeling like a subject you studied and starts feeling like a language you truly own. At the C2 level, vocabulary is an area where you can truly shine. You already know thousands of English words, so the goal is no longer to learn as many new words as possible. Now, the focus is on precision and variety. Instead of using the same basic words again and again, you learn to choose words that fit the situation perfectly. For example, instead of always saying good, you can say excellent, outstanding, remarkable, or brilliant, depending on what you want to express. Instead of always saying bad, you can say awful, unpleasant, dreadful, or subpar. Each word carries a slightly different feeling, and choosing the right one makes your speech more accurate and expressive. At this level, you can also use idiomatic expressions naturally. Phrases like to cut corners, to go the extra mile, or to be on the same page add color to your speech and make you sound more natural. The key is not just knowing these expressions, but using them at the right moment. When your vocabulary choices match the context, your speech becomes more engaging and enjoyable to listen to. Another very important skill in advanced speaking is storytelling. Humans naturally connect through stories, and being able to tell a good story in English makes you sound fluent, confident, and charismatic. A strong story usually has a clear structure. It starts with a beginning that sets the scene, moves into a middle where something interesting or challenging happens, and finishes with an ending that resolves the situation. Practice telling stories from your own life, even simple ones. You can also invent stories or retell news articles using your own words. While doing this, focus on details. Use descriptive language to build atmosphere and create curiosity. Try to make your listener feel involved, as if they're inside the story with you. When you can do this well, people stop focusing on your English and start focusing on you. Now let's talk about the emotional side of speaking, because at the C2 level, confidence is everything. You may already have strong skills, but nervousness can still cause problems. It can make you hesitate, forget words, or sound less fluent than you truly are. This is very common, even for advanced learners. The best solution is exposure. The more you speak, the less frightening it becomes. Join group discussions, find language exchange partners, and take every chance to use English in real situations. Record yourself speaking and listen to the recordings later. At first, you may feel uncomfortable or notice many small mistakes. That is normal. Over time, however, you will hear clear improvement. You will sound smoother, more confident, and more natural. As your confidence grows, your fluency begins to shine. People respond more to confidence than to perfect grammar. When you believe in your English, others will too. Another skill that helps greatly at this level is understanding register. Register means the level of formality you use when speaking. You do not speak the same way to a close friend as you do in a job interview or an academic discussion. At C2, you should be able to adjust your language naturally depending on the situation. This includes your vocabulary, tone, and sentence structure. When you master vocabulary, storytelling, confidence, and register, your spoken English reaches a level that feels complete and powerful. English is no longer something you struggle to control. It becomes a tool you use comfortably to express who you are, what you think, and how you connect with others. At the C2 level, you should be able to move smoothly between different registers. This means you can change how you speak depending on who you're talking to. In a job interview, you use polite, professional, and formal English. With friends, you relax. You use idioms, slang, and a more natural, friendly tone. When speaking with children, you simplify your language, speak more clearly, and use more expression and emotion. Being able to change your register shows more than just fluency. It shows cultural understanding. It means you understand not only the language but also the social rules behind it. You know what is appropriate to say, how to say it, and when to say it. This is a key sign of real mastery. It is also important to remember this. Speaking at C2 is not about perfection. Even native speakers hesitate sometimes. They forget words. They repeat themselves or change direction in the middle of a sentence. The difference is that they do not stop. They continue speaking with confidence. So instead of chasing perfect English, chase connection. Speak to communicate, not to impress. When your goal is to share ideas clearly and connect with others, your fluency improves naturally. As you continue your journey towards C2, make speaking a daily habit. Do not wait for perfect situations. Create your own opportunities. Talk to yourself while doing daily tasks. Talk to other people whenever you can. Record yourself speaking and listen back to it. Shadow native speakers. Practice telling stories. Practice persuasion. Play with intonation and emotion. Explore idioms and expressions. Experiment with different registers. The more you speak, the more flexible and natural your English becomes. Over time, something important happens. You stop thinking about how to speak. You stop checking every sentence in your head. You simply speak. English starts flowing out of you naturally, like a language that truly belongs to you. That is the real power of C2 speaking. And that is where this journey is leading you. Now, when people think about advanced English, they usually think first about speaking and listening. But at the C2 level, reading becomes just as important. Reading is the gateway to advanced vocabulary, deep cultural understanding, and strong critical thinking skills. These are the skills that make you sound not only fluent, but also educated and sophisticated. At lower levels, reading is often about understanding the main idea, guessing new words from context, and answering simple comprehension questions. But at the C2 level, reading goes much deeper. You read to notice style, tone, argument structure, and hidden meaning. You read to understand how ideas are built and defended. You read to absorb advanced language patterns that later appear naturally in your speaking and writing. Reading exposes you to vocabulary that is rarely used in daily conversation but is essential in academic, professional, and intellectual settings. It also teaches you how English speakers express opinions, doubt, irony, and persuasion in written form. The more you read high-quality texts, the more these patterns become part of your thinking. This is why reading is not just a passive skill. It actively shapes how you speak, write, and think in English. At the C2 level, reading helps transform English from something you use into something you live inside. At lower levels, reading in English is often about answering comprehension questions. You focus on understanding the basic meaning of the text and finding correct answers. But at the C2 level, reading becomes something much deeper and richer. It is no longer only about understanding what the text says. It is about understanding how and why it says it. At this stage, reading means analyzing the tone of the writer. You notice whether the text sounds neutral, emotional, sarcastic, critical, or persuasive. You learn to recognize small shifts in meaning and attitude. You begin to see rhetorical strategies, such as how writers try to influence the reader's opinion. You start to appreciate literary devices like metaphor, irony, symbolism, and imagery. Most importantly, you connect what you read to wider cultural, social, and intellectual contexts. At C2, you do not read only to understand. You read to interpret, to evaluate, and to enjoy the richness of English in all its forms. Let's begin with the types of texts you should read at this level. Simplified articles and basic textbooks are no longer enough. To grow, you need to challenge yourself with authentic and complex materials. This includes novels, essays, opinion articles from major newspapers, academic research papers, speeches, and even poetry. Each type of text develops a different reading skill. Novels help you understand storytelling, character development, description, and natural dialogue. Essays train you to follow logical arguments and counterarguments. Academic articles teach you how to read dense and formal language and understand complex ideas. Poetry introduces rhythm, metaphor, emotion, and ambiguity. By reading across all these forms, you expose yourself to the full range of English. This variety is what leads to true reading mastery. Now, let's talk about how to read at the C2 level. At earlier stages, you may have read word by word, translating everything in your head. Or you may have skimmed quickly just to catch the main idea. At C2, you need to be able to move flexibly between different reading styles. Sometimes you skim a text to understand the general message. Sometimes you slow down and study a paragraph carefully. Sometimes you stop to think about why the writer chose a particular word or phrase. You may pause to notice how a sentence is structured or how a paragraph builds tension or persuasion. This flexibility is what makes your reading strong and intelligent. For example, imagine you are reading a political article. Skimming helps you understand the main argument. But careful reading helps you notice the writer's bias, the metaphors used to influence opinion, and the way ideas are organized to guide the reader's thinking. You start seeing the text as a constructed message, not just a collection of words. Another important habit at this level is asking questions while you read. What is the writer's goal? Who is the intended audience? What ideas are emphasized, and what ideas are ignored? Do you agree or disagree, and why? These questions turn reading into an active process. Reading at C2 also feeds directly into your speaking and writing. The structures, expressions, and ideas you absorb through reading slowly become part of your own language. You start using more advanced vocabulary naturally. Your arguments become clearer and more balanced. Your style becomes more mature. In the end, reading at the C2 level is not a task. It is a conversation between you and the text. It challenges your mind, deepens your understanding of the world, and helps English become not just a language you use, but a language you truly think in. Reaching this level of reading means something important. It shows that you do not only understand English words and sentences. You understand communication in English. You can see meaning beyond the surface. You understand intention, attitude, and hidden messages. One key skill at the C2 level is recognizing tone. Tone is the writer's attitude toward the subject or the reader. At this level, you should be able to feel the tone clearly while reading. The writer may sound serious, hopeful, angry, playful, ironic, skeptical, or sarcastic. Often, tone is not obvious from the basic meaning of the words. Instead, it comes from the writer's style, their choice of adjectives, the rhythm of sentences, and techniques like exaggeration or understatement. For example, imagine reading the sentence, "Of course, the government's new plan will definitely solve all our problems, just like the last one did." The words seem positive at first, but the tone is clearly sarcastic. The writer does not believe the plan will work. At the C2 level, catching this kind of meaning is essential. Tone is what makes reading feel real and authentic. Another important area at this level is understanding idiomatic and figurative language. Reading is one of the best ways to absorb this naturally. Writers, especially in journalism and literature, love to use metaphors, idioms, similes, and cultural references. If you only focus on the literal meaning, you miss much of the message and beauty of the text. For example, if a character in a novel says, "He finally kicked the bucket," you need to understand that it means the person died, not that they kicked something. If an article says, "The new policy is a double-edged sword," it means the policy has both advantages and disadvantages. At the C2 level, you do not just memorize these expressions. You notice how they are used, in what situations, and with what tone. This helps you use them naturally later in your own speaking and writing. Now, let's go deeper into literature because literature is one of the richest resources for advanced learners. Reading novels, short stories, and plays in English allows you to see how language creates emotion, builds characters, and reflects society. Literature shows you English at its most expressive and creative. When you read literature, you see how writers choose words carefully to shape mood and meaning. You learn how dialogue can reveal personality. You notice how descriptions can create tension, sadness, humor, or beauty. Literature also exposes you to different historical periods, social issues, and cultural values. This deepens not only your language skills, but also your understanding of the world. Even challenging authors become valuable at this level. While writers like Shakespeare may feel difficult at first, they train your mind to deal with complex language, layered meaning, and powerful imagery. You do not need to understand every word immediately. What matters is learning to interpret, to feel the rhythm of the language, and to see how meaning is created. Reading literature at C2 is not about speed or quantity. It is about depth. It teaches you patience, attention, and sensitivity to language. Over time, this sensitivity appears in your own English. Your vocabulary becomes richer. Your sentences become more expressive. Your thinking becomes more precise. This is when reading stops being just a skill and becomes an experience. English turns into a language you explore, enjoy, and truly understand. Reading at the C2 level can feel challenging at first, but it is also exciting and very rewarding. One of the best ways to improve is through literature. Reading classic literature helps you understand the roots of English, especially the way idioms, expressions, and rhythms developed over time. Poetry teaches rhythm, emotion, and the beauty of language. Modern authors show you how English is used today, including contemporary slang, cultural issues, and the ways people adapt language in different situations. When you read literature, you also learn to read between the lines. Characters often do not say exactly what they mean. Instead, their actions, tone, or the situation reveal hidden messages. At C2, this ability to infer meaning and interpret what is not directly said is essential. It allows you to understand deeper ideas, emotions, and intentions, which makes your English richer and more natural. Another important type of reading for advanced learners is academic reading. At this level, you will encounter research papers, theoretical essays, and technical manuals. These texts often use very dense language with long sentences, advanced vocabulary, and specialized terms. At first, these materials can feel overwhelming, but you do not need to understand every single word. Your goal is to identify the main idea, follow the argument, recognize supporting evidence, and evaluate the logic. One helpful exercise is to take a difficult article and summarize it in your own words. This proves that you not only understood the content, but also processed it deeply enough to explain it clearly. This skill is exactly what universities and employers look for when they want someone with advanced English proficiency. At the C2 level, critical reading is another key skill. Critical reading means you do not just accept everything you read at face value. Instead, you analyze it carefully. You ask questions like, what is the writer's purpose? What assumptions are being made? What evidence is provided? What is missing? Do I agree with the conclusions? This approach is not just useful for exams. It is useful for life. We live in a world full of information, and being able to question, evaluate, and think independently helps you become more than just a language learner. Practicing critical reading in English also strengthens your overall critical thinking, so you can better understand arguments, make decisions, and communicate clearly in any situation. At the same time, reading should also be enjoyable. You do not have to focus only on difficult texts or academic papers. Novels, stories, magazines, and even blogs can give you pleasure while teaching advanced language. Enjoyment is important because it keeps you motivated. When you read for fun, your brain naturally absorbs vocabulary, idiomatic expressions, sentence structures, and cultural knowledge without effort. You start noticing patterns in language, humor, and writing style. Over time, this exposure strengthens every other skill, speaking, writing, listening, because your brain is familiar with English in rich, authentic contexts. In summary, advanced reading at C2 is about depth, understanding, and interpretation. You read to enjoy, to think, to analyze, and to expand your knowledge of both language and culture. Literature trains emotion, style, and subtle meaning. Academic texts teach logic, structure, and critical thinking. Combined, these approaches turn reading into a powerful tool for fluency. At this level, reading is not just a skill, it becomes a way to think, connect, and truly live in English. At the C2 level, reading in English should never feel like homework. It should feel exciting, like a door opening into new worlds. When you read a novel, you can live inside another person's mind and see the world through their eyes. When you read history, you travel back in time and experience events as if you were there. When you read science, you explore the universe, discover new ideas, and understand how things work. English gives you access to an enormous library of knowledge, imagination, and culture. And at this advanced level, you finally have the ability to enjoy all of it fully. Choose reading materials that interest and excite you, not just ones that feel like exercises or lessons. The more you love what you read, the more naturally your skills will improve. Reading becomes enjoyable, and at the same time, your understanding of vocabulary, style, and culture grows without you even noticing. A common question from advanced learners is, should I still use a dictionary? At C2, the answer is use it wisely. Do not stop at every new word, because that will break your flow and make reading feel frustrating. Instead, try to guess the meaning from context first. Often, you don't need the exact definition to understand the overall message. But if a word appears frequently or seems important to the text, then look it up. After that, immediately try to use the word in your own sentence. This way, you are not just memorizing definitions, you are making the word part of your active vocabulary. Reading is also the best way to grow vocabulary at the C2 level.
Why?
Because words appear in real-life context. You do not just learn the word resilient. You see it used to describe a community recovering after a disaster or a person overcoming challenges. You feel the word, understand its emotion and meaning, and see how it works naturally in English. Reading also helps you notice subtle differences between similar words. For example, resilient, strong, and tough all describe someone who can handle difficulties, but each carries a slightly different feeling. By reading, you learn these differences naturally and start using them correctly yourself. One final tip for C2 reading is to make it interactive. Don't just read silently and move on. Try reading aloud sometimes. This helps with pronunciation, rhythm, and intonation. Keep a reading journal where you write down interesting words, phrases, or ideas. Summarize articles or chapters in your own words. Ask questions about the text and your reactions to it. By engaging actively with what you read, you not only understand it better, but also improve your speaking and writing skills at the same time. At this level, reading becomes more than a skill. It becomes a way to think, imagine, and connect with English on a deeper level. It helps you feel the language, understand nuance, and enjoy the beauty of how ideas and emotions are expressed. The more you read, the more confident and natural your English becomes. English stops feeling like a second language and starts feeling like a living, exciting part of your world. At the C2 level, reading should be active and interactive. Don't just read silently and move on. Write down interesting words, phrases, or your reflections on what you read. Share your thoughts with others. Join book clubs or online discussions in English where you can talk about novels, articles, or research. The more you interact with the text, the more alive it becomes, and the more your language skills improve. Reading at this level is not just about understanding words, it's about joining a global conversation. You are reading the same books, articles, and research that millions of English speakers around the world are reading. You begin to understand jokes, arguments, metaphors, and ideas at the same level as native speakers. This is a very empowering experience. Reading gives your English depth. It helps you become not just fluent, but truly literate in the language. Once reading is strong, writing becomes the next exciting challenge. Writing at C2 is more than putting sentences together correctly. It is about expressing yourself clearly, elegantly, and logically, while also showing style and personality. At this level, your writing should not only be correct, but also compelling. It should be able to inform, persuade, or inspire, depending on your goal. Many learners think of writing as the most academic of all skills, and it is true that essays, reports, and research papers are common practice at this level. But C2 writing is also creative, personal, and expressive. The real beauty of advanced writing is that you can move easily across many types of texts. For example, you can write a polite yet confident email, a well-structured and critical essay, a story that conveys emotions, or even a social media post that feels natural and engaging. This flexibility is what shows true mastery of writing. You are not limited to one style. You can adapt your words, tone, and structure to the audience and purpose. Let's start with academic and formal writing, because this is often where advanced learners are tested. In academic writing, clarity and structure are key. Your ideas should be easy to follow, logically organized, and supported with examples or evidence. You need to connect your points smoothly, using connectors like however, therefore, on the other hand, and in conclusion. This helps your writing flow naturally and makes it persuasive. At this level, it is not enough to be grammatically correct. You must also be convincing, coherent, and precise. Formal writing also requires attention to tone and style. You may need to sound objective, respectful, or professional. For example, an academic essay should avoid slang and personal casual expressions, but it can still be engaging by using clear examples and interesting insights. Writing at this level is also about thinking critically. You must analyze information, compare different ideas, and draw well-reasoned conclusions. This shows not just mastery of English, but mastery of thought. In short, writing at the C2 level is both challenging and rewarding. It is the skill where your language, creativity, and critical thinking come together. When you write well, you can communicate ideas effectively, influence others, and express yourself beautifully. Advanced writing is not about perfection. It's about clarity, style, and impact. At the C2 level, writing is not only about creativity, it is also about being clear, logical, and persuasive, whether you are writing for university exams or professional work. You need to be able to build strong arguments that make sense and convince the reader. This means your writing should have a clear structure. Start with an introduction that sets the topic and explains your position. Then, develop your ideas in body paragraphs, giving examples, evidence, and reasoning. Finally, end with a conclusion that summarizes your points and leaves the reader with a clear understanding of your message. But having a good structure is not enough. At this level, you also need to show critical thinking. This means analyzing information rather than just repeating it. Compare different viewpoints, recognize limitations, and explain your own interpretation. For example, if you are writing about climate change, it is not enough to say simply that climate change is a problem. You should include data, compare different opinions, consider counterarguments, and then explain why your conclusion is the strongest. This depth of analysis is what academic readers expect at C2. Another key feature of advanced writing is cohesion. Cohesion is about how sentences and paragraphs connect smoothly. At lower levels, you might only use simple words like and, but, so, or because. At C2, you want a much wider range of connectors so your text flows naturally and professionally. Phrases like on the contrary, in addition, by contrast, to illustrate this point, nevertheless, or to a large extent show the relationships between ideas clearly and make your writing look polished. Cohesion is not just about words, it is also about rhythm. Mixing long and short sentences, arranging paragraphs logically, and building each idea from the previous one makes your writing pleasant and engaging to read. Now, let's move into professional writing, because in today's world, many of you will need English for emails, reports, proposals, and presentations. At C2, professional writing should be precise, clear, and confident. Your emails should communicate the message efficiently while remaining polite and professional. Reports and proposals should be structured so the reader understands your points immediately and sees the evidence clearly. Even short messages, like memos or updates, benefit from careful word choice, logical flow, and a confident tone. Professional writing also requires attention to audience and purpose. In an email to a colleague, you might be more casual, but in a proposal for a manager or client, your tone should be formal, respectful, and persuasive. This is where C2 level flexibility comes in. You can adjust your style, register, and vocabulary to match the situation. Writing at this level is not just about correctness. It is about effectiveness, clarity, and impact. In summary, advanced writing at C2 is a combination of structure, critical thinking, cohesion, and style. You write not only to convey information, but also to convince, engage, and impress your readers. Whether for school, work, or personal projects, mastering these skills allows you to communicate powerfully and confidently in English. Writing at this level turns your ideas into something that others can clearly understand and respond to, which is the true sign of mastery. At the C2 level, professional writing should be clear, polite, and effective. You want to avoid unnecessary complexity, but still show sophistication. For example, When writing an email, you should not sound too formal or distant, but also not too casual or careless. A good example might be, I hope this message finds you well. I'm writing to follow up on our previous discussion regarding the project timeline. Could you kindly confirm whether the updated schedule works for your team? This email is polite, clear, and professional. Tone is very important in professional writing. At C2, you need to adapt your tone to your audience. With executives, you might be more formal, with colleagues, more direct, with clients, more persuasive. Choosing the right tone shows mastery and makes your writing effective. Professional writing is often about balance, being clear, respectful, and confident without sounding stiff or overcomplicated. Creative writing, on the other hand, gives you freedom to play with language. At C2, you should feel confident experimenting with words, images, rhythm, and emotion. Writing stories, poems, or creative essays helps you explore imagery, metaphor, and style. In creative writing, it's not just what you say, but how you say it. For example, instead of writing, "The sun set and it got dark," you might write, "The sun melted into the horizon, leaving the sky bruised purple and gold, and the first shadows stretched their fingers across the earth." This version uses imagery and rhythm to create mood and makes the scene more vivid for the reader. Practicing creative writing improves your overall control of English. It helps you become more sensitive to style, connotation, and the musicality of words. You start to notice the effect of each word, the flow of sentences, and how rhythm can change the feel of your writing. Creative skills also improve professional and academic writing. Choosing words carefully, writing with impact, and creating vivid examples makes your work more engaging and memorable. One of the biggest challenges at C2 is mastering register and style. Register is the level of formality and the type of language that is appropriate in a given context. For example, when texting a friend, you might write, "Hey, want to grab coffee later?" In an email to a client, you might write, "I hope you're doing well. I would like to schedule a meeting to discuss our upcoming project." Knowing how to adjust your language depending on the situation is a key C2 skill. Writing at this level is not just about being correct, it's about flexibility, creativity, and effectiveness. You can write formally or casually, persuasively or playfully, clearly or artistically, depending on your purpose. By practicing both professional and creative writing, you build a complete skill set that lets you communicate confidently in any context. At the C2 level, one of the most important skills is adjusting your language for the right audience. For example, if you're texting a friend, you might write, "Hey, want to grab a coffee later?" But if you are writing to your professor, a more appropriate version would be, "Would you be available for a meeting later today to discuss the assignment?" The difference here is not about correctness. Both are correct, but about appropriateness. Being able to adjust your tone and style depending on the situation is a sign of advanced mastery. This skill is called moving across registers, and at C2, you should be able to do it smoothly. You can write casually with friends, politely with teachers, or formally in business emails. This shows that you not only know English, but also understand the social and cultural rules behind how English is used. People who can do this naturally are seen as confident and professional writers. Another key aspect of C2 writing is precision. Precision means choosing the exact word that conveys your meaning. At lower levels, you might use general words like thing, nice, or bad. At C2, you want sharper and more accurate choices. Instead of thing, you might write aspect, factor, element, or component, depending on the context. Instead of nice, you could use pleasant, delightful, thoughtful, or generous. Instead of bad, you might choose harmful, inadequate, disappointing, or detrimental. Precise word choice clarifies your ideas and prevents confusion, making your writing stronger and more professional. Grammar also becomes a tool for sophistication, not just correctness. At C2, you can use advanced structures to add variety and emphasis. For example, you can use inversion to highlight a point, Rarely have I seen such dedication. You can use conditional sentences to explore possibilities. Had the company invested earlier, the results might have been different. You can use nominalization to make your writing more formal. The implementation of new policies resulted in greater efficiency. These structures give your writing depth and flexibility, allowing you to express ideas in subtle and effective ways. However, advanced writing is not about making everything complicated. In fact, some of the best writing is simple, clear, and direct. Complexity should have a purpose. It should help your message, not just make the sentence look impressive. At C2, you have the freedom to choose. You can write long, complex sentences when needed or short, powerful sentences when that is more effective. Both choices are correct. The key is knowing which is best for your purpose and audience. In summary, C2 writing combines register, precision, grammar, and style. You can adjust your tone for different readers, choose the exact word to express your meaning, use advanced structures for effect, and decide when to be simple or complex. This flexibility and control is what makes your writing sophisticated, clear, and truly advanced. At the C2 level, writing is not just about putting words together correctly. It's about making your ideas clear, powerful, and engaging. You can write long, complex sentences when you need to explain something carefully or give a detailed argument. You can also use short, sharp sentences when you want to create impact or make a point stand out. Knowing when to use each type of sentence is what makes your writing effective. The balance between detail and simplicity, complexity and clarity, is one of the hallmarks of advanced English writing. Another essential skill at this level is editing. Great writers are not only good at writing first drafts, they are excellent at rewriting and improving their work. After you finish a draft, go back and ask yourself, is my argument clear? Does my structure make sense? Are my words precise? Have I repeated ideas unnecessarily? Could a sentence be smoother or more expressive? Editing is where good writing becomes excellent writing. Even professional authors revise their work many times before it is published. At C2, you should feel comfortable doing the same. Editing is not a sign of weakness. It is the secret to polished, professional writing. Writing at C2 is also closely connected to the other English skills: reading, listening, and speaking. Writing does not happen in isolation. When you read widely, you absorb new vocabulary, phrases, and styles that you can later use in your own writing. When you listen to English carefully, you notice rhythm, tone, and phrasing, which can be reflected in how you structure sentences. When you speak, you practice expressing your thoughts in real time, which makes your written ideas flow more naturally. Improving writing is therefore not just about writing more, it's about giving your brain rich input from all directions. Another helpful practice is to keep a personal writing routine. This could be a journal, essays, blog posts, or even social media entries in English. The important thing is to write regularly. Don't wait for exams or school assignments. Write about your day, your thoughts, your opinions, your dreams. By doing this consistently, you begin to notice patterns in your writing. You see which words or phrases you overuse, which sentence structures are common, and where you can challenge yourself to try something new. This kind of self-awareness is essential at C2 because it allows you to continuously improve and refine your style. Finally, remember that writing is about connection. Whether you are writing a formal essay, a work email, or a personal story, your goal is to communicate ideas in a way that others can understand, relate to, and respond to. Writing is not just an exercise in grammar or vocabulary. It is a way to express your thoughts, share your perspective, and engage with the world. At the C2 level, your writing should be clear, elegant, and meaningful. You have the tools to adapt your style, choose precise words, structure your ideas logically, and even add personality or emotion when needed. By practicing regularly, editing carefully, and connecting your writing to everything you read, listen to, and say, you can reach a point where your English writing is not only correct, it is confident, natural, and sophisticated. At the C2 level, writing is more than just correct grammar and rich vocabulary. Whether you are writing an academic essay, a professional report, or a personal story, your main goal is to connect with your reader. Don't write just to show that you know English. Write to communicate something meaningful. When your writing has a clear purpose, it becomes stronger, more engaging, and easier for others to understand. That is the difference between merely correct writing and powerful writing. As you continue your journey, think of writing not as a duty or an assignment, but as a craft, an art, and a way to shape your ideas. The more you write, the more precise, creative, and confident you become. Eventually, English will stop feeling like just a tool or a subject to study. It will become a voice, a pen, a canvas, and you will be able to express yourself freely and fully. That is the beauty of C2 writing. It allows you to communicate at the highest level, whether to inform, persuade, inspire, or entertain. But achieving C2 is not just about skills. One of the most overlooked parts of advanced English is mindset and learning strategies. At this stage, the biggest challenges are no longer vocabulary lists or grammar exercises, they are motivation, consistency, and self-discipline. At lower levels, you may have had teachers giving you assignments, textbooks guiding you, or exams pushing you forward. At C2, you are your own teacher. You are responsible for deciding what to read, what to listen to, how to practice, and how to keep improving. This independence is exciting, but it can also feel overwhelming. That's why having the right mindset is crucial. The right mindset keeps you moving forward, curious, and hungry for progress. It also helps you avoid the plateau, a stage where learners feel stuck even though they are already advanced. Almost every learner experiences it. You may feel like you are not improving as quickly as before, or that every lesson feels repetitive. This is normal. At C2, progress is subtler. It comes in small improvements in precision, fluency, and understanding, rather than giant leaps in basic grammar. Recognizing this helps you stay patient and persistent. Another key part of your mindset is self-awareness. At this level, you need to notice your weaknesses and strengths honestly. For example, you may realize your speaking is fluent but lacks variety, or that your writing is correct but not expressive enough. By identifying these areas, you can target your practice effectively. Consistency matters more than intensity. You don't need to study for hours every day. Even a small, focused practice session each day builds progress over time. Finally, embrace curiosity and challenge. Keep exploring new materials, different accents, difficult articles, complex novels, speeches, or debates. Push yourself to try forms of English that feel uncomfortable. It's in this discomfort that you grow. Combine this with regular speaking, listening, reading, and writing, and over time, your English will become effortless, natural, and truly advanced. C2 is not just a level, it's a way of thinking, learning, and expressing yourself in English. With the right mindset and habits, you can maintain it, enjoy it, and continue improving for life. When you start learning English, progress feels exciting. Every new word you learn makes you happy. Every new grammar rule feels like a big achievement. You can see yourself improving week by week. But when you reach the C2 level, progress feels different. It becomes smaller, quieter, and sometimes almost invisible. You can already understand movies without subtitles. You can have long conversations comfortably. You can read books and understand most of what you read. So now, improvement is about small details. It is about choosing the right word, speaking with a smooth rhythm, writing in a sophisticated way, or understanding subtle tones in reading. These improvements are real, but they are harder to notice than the big leaps you saw at earlier levels. Because these changes are smaller, many learners feel like they are stuck or not improving. The truth is, you are not stuck. You are refining your skills. Refinement takes patience. If you continue practicing, exposing yourself to new and challenging materials, and pushing yourself to express complex ideas, you are still growing, even if it doesn't feel obvious. So, how can you stay motivated when progress seems slow? One important way is to set goals that are about life, not just English. Instead of saying, I want to learn 50 new words this week, try something more meaningful, like, I want to read this interesting English novel and be able to talk about it with a friend. Instead of saying, I will practice speaking for 20 minutes, say, I want to tell the story of my childhood in English in a way that really shows emotion. Goals like these give your learning purpose. At C2, learning English is not just about passing exams. It is about living in English, thinking in English, and connecting with people through it. Another essential factor at this level is discipline. Motivation can come and go, but discipline keeps you moving. Discipline is about creating habits that make English part of your everyday life. Maybe you read a few pages of an English book every night before bed. Maybe you listen to an English podcast while cooking breakfast. Maybe you write a short diary entry in English every day. These small habits add up. Over time, English becomes natural for you. You start thinking in English without needing to translate. At this stage, learning is also about curiosity. Try to challenge yourself with materials that are slightly harder than what you are comfortable with. Watch a movie without subtitles, read a newspaper article on a complex topic, or discuss a difficult idea with a friend. These challenges help you notice details in language, like how native speakers express humor, emotion, or subtle opinions. The key is to keep stretching yourself. Even small challenges, repeated over time, lead to steady growth. Finally, remember that growth at C2 is not dramatic, but it is powerful. You are no longer learning the basics. You are mastering the language. You are refining your ability to speak, listen, read, and write at a high level. Each small improvement, each new nuance you notice, each subtle way you express yourself brings you closer to fluency that feels natural. Keep practicing, stay disciplined, set meaningful goals, and enjoy the journey. English is no longer just a subject. At C2, it becomes a part of how you live and think. At the C2 level, small daily habits matter more than long, intense study sessions. You might write in a journal every morning for 10 minutes in English. You might listen to a short podcast while commuting or read a few pages of a book before bed. These habits may feel minor, but over months and years, they make a big difference. They keep your skills sharp and help you continue growing. The great thing about habits is that once they are formed, you don't need motivation to do them. They happen automatically. That is why at this stage, it is better to focus on building small, sustainable routines than waiting for perfect study moments. Autonomy is another key part of learning at C2. Autonomy means you take control of your own learning. You don't wait for a teacher to tell you what to study. Instead, you notice your strengths and weaknesses and create strategies to improve. For example, maybe you understand academic English well, but casual conversation with slang feels difficult. You can fix this by watching sitcoms, listening to YouTube creators, or speaking with friends who use everyday expressions. Or maybe your writing is strong, but your speaking feels stiff. You can then make time for live discussions, debates, or even recording short videos of yourself speaking spontaneously. This kind of self-directed learning is what keeps you improving long after classes or courses are over. Another important mindset at C2 is accepting mistakes. Many advanced learners want everything to be perfect. They hesitate to speak unless their grammar is flawless. They avoid writing unless every sentence is polished. They are afraid to share ideas unless they're certain they sound correct. But perfectionism can actually slow progress. Even at the highest level, mistakes will happen. That is normal. Mistakes are not signs of failure. They show that you are trying new things and expanding your abilities. The goal is not to make zero mistakes, but to communicate confidently, experiment with language, and keep learning every day. If you can accept mistakes as a natural part of learning, you will stay motivated and continue improving instead of feeling frustrated. At this stage, motivation alone is not enough. Discipline, autonomy, and habit are what keep you growing. Combine them with a willingness to try, even if you fail sometimes, and your English will continue to advance. You will notice subtle improvements in how you choose words, how smoothly you speak, and how naturally you write. You will feel more comfortable thinking, reading, and expressing yourself in English. By forming routines, taking charge of your learning, and embracing mistakes, you turn English from something you study into something you live. C2 is not just about knowledge or skill, it's about mindset. How you approach learning, how you keep yourself engaged, and how you adapt when progress feels slow all define how far you go. In the end, reaching C2 is not a destination but a journey. It is about building lifelong habits, developing independence, and seeing mistakes as opportunities to grow. When you combine discipline, autonomy, and courage, your English stops being a challenge. It becomes a natural part of your life, a tool for connection, creativity, and expression. At this level, every small effort adds up. Every routine, every experiment, every mistake you learn from brings you closer to truly mastering English. Curiosity is one of the strongest motivators at the C2 level. Instead of thinking, I need to practice English, start thinking, I want to explore the world through English. Let your interests guide your learning. If you are curious about psychology, read articles or watch lectures in English. If you love cooking, follow recipes and food channels in English. If history, art, technology, or fashion excite you, use English to explore those topics. When you learn this way, English is not just a subject. It becomes a tool to access things you love. This makes learning fun, meaningful, and personal. Community is another important part of staying motivated. Language is social, and even at C2, you need interaction to stay inspired. Find discussion groups, join book clubs, participate in online forums, or attend events where English is spoken. Talking and sharing with others not only helps you practice, it also allows you to celebrate your progress and support each other through challenges. Learning with others is simply more enjoyable. At advanced levels, it's easy to stay in your comfort zone, reading and listening quietly by yourself. But real growth often happens when you engage with people in live situations, when you practice speaking spontaneously, and when you challenge yourself to respond in real time. At C2, your mindset becomes as important as your skills. English is no longer just a subject to study. It is part of your identity. You have invested years learning it, and now it can connect you with the world. Don't think of English as a task you must complete. Think of it as a way to live, to explore, and to communicate. Imagine yourself as bilingual or multilingual, someone who belongs in the global conversation. This mindset shift changes motivation from something forced into something natural. When you see yourself as part of a larger English-speaking world, learning becomes a lifestyle, not a chore. This stage is also about balance. While you continue refining grammar, vocabulary, and pronunciation, focus equally on using English to satisfy curiosity, to connect with people, and to engage with ideas. Motivation at this level comes not from exercises, exams, or assignments, but from the joy of exploration and the sense of belonging in a community of learners and speakers. You are no longer learning English to pass tests. You are using English to live fully in the language. To sum up, curiosity, community, and mindset are essential for C2 learners. Curiosity keeps your learning exciting, letting your interests guide your study naturally. Community provides support, interaction, and fun. And mindset turns English into part of who you are, not just something you do. By combining these three, you ensure that your learning is sustainable, enjoyable, and deeply motivating. This is what separates advanced learners from simply competent learners, the ability to live in English every day, not just study it.